Our guest today is Patrick McNulty. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Patrick.
Okay, well, I'm Canadian. Grew up in Canada. I was a screenwriter for a bunch of years. I worked with DreamWorks. Had some scripts go there.
Yeah.
And then decided to do more of the book side. I published my first book in 2009 with Kunati Press. It was called Sleepers Awake. At that time, I was in the Canadian Army as a medic. And then I left the Army to become a policeman. So now I'm a policeman. And since publishing that first book, I've published about 15 or 16 other books by myself, like independently published.
Yeah. So how are you finding being a policeman?
It's challenging. It's rewarding, but it's also challenging. I enjoy it. I like helping people, so that's where I come in.
Do you find that helps with the writing as well?
Oh yeah, there's lots of good stories. I come with the job. There's lots of excitement, and there's lots of downtime too. So you can always jot something down on your phone and pick it up later. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your books.
Well, the latest 3 books I have, I've always been a huge fan of horror. So the last 3 books that I've published have been in my Monsters and Mayhem collection. The first one, A Dark Breed, was based on a screenplay that I wrote a couple years ago. The second one, also Avernus Island, about a family that inherits a cursed island, is another screenplay. And the third one, God of the Dead, the latest one that just came out, is about a young woman that's forcibly possessed by an evil corporation, and she brings about the end of the world. But yeah, I've always been a huge fan of horror, and I like when the horror is based with like real people, real families, real friends. So there's not a lot of like superheroes. There's not a lot of anybody that's got special powers in my books. They're always, trying to keep it as grounded and realistic as possible.
Yeah. So is that what inspired you to write horror? Because it's something that you really enjoyed anyway.
Oh yeah. I mean, horror's always been my biggest go-to genre. I mean, the OGs like Stephen King and Clive Barker and Dean Koontz have always been a standard with me. But yeah, I've always wanted to write horror. I've always loved horror movies, horror podcasts, or everything really.
Yeah.
Even my mugs.
So can you tell us about the first horror story that you ever wrote?
The first horror story I ever remember writing was back in high school, which was about 1 million years ago. But that character, his name was Bishop Kane, and he was more of a supernatural bounty hunter. And he stayed with me for years. And he ended up being the subject of my first published book, Sleepers Awake, where this Bishop Kane had to chase down his own daughter, to kill her, because she had turned into something less than holy. So, yeah, that was my first story.
Fantastic. Are you going to bring him into any of your books in the future?
I don't know. I mean, he's part of a different universe. I have another book that also shares that universe. It's called The Blood Singer. And that's the Ministry of the Wraith universe. I might go back to that. I do enjoy that world, but again, it's more like supernatural superheroes instead of real people. So it's got its own merits, but I'm not sure. We'll see. Hopefully. But the series that I'm working on now is going well, so I'm going to stay with that for a bit.
Yeah. So how do you come up with the stories?
It's basically a big mix of everyday life, my job, reading stuff in the paper, different ideas that pop into my head all of a sudden. Like, it comes from anywhere really, and I just try to keep them all in like a file on my phone, just in case something else pops up. And if an idea has legs, I can move it along, and I can, if I can see the end, and I could picture at least some skeletons or bones, if you will, like of the story, then I can make that connection, and then that's the story I'll keep for sure.
Brilliant. So do you find any aspects of writing challenging at all?
Challenging? Not getting enough time to write. I have 3 kids. I'm married, so I have a full-time job. So it's difficult to carve out some time to write. And I do a lot of other promotion stuff for other writers, trying to help them. And I mean, it's just trying to fill the days and get as much writing in as possible is a challenge. But the actual writing, I don't usually have writer's block. I don't usually struggle for ideas or anything like that. So other than that.
So what's the other thing that you do for the other authors?
I run a contest. It's a monthly flash fiction contest where all top 5 stories of every month will be published in an anthology next year, and all the proceeds will go to Jillian's House, which is a local women's shelter in my area. And what I did was basically I tried to have a showcase for authors that might not have as much promotion, even money or publicity that they deserve. Like, these people are great authors, and they're very, very creative, and they want a voice, and they want to be seen. So I allow that to happen. I give them a little bit of help anyway. I put them on my website, and they have a spot there, and I post them as much as possible on Facebook and Instagram and things like that. So trying to promote them as much as possible.
That's the kind thing to do in helping others, especially in this community. It's quite hard, isn't it, to get out there?
Well, yeah. I mean, I found I'm new to Facebook this year. I've just started, really getting into Facebook and Instagram this year, and I found some really great communities. Like the Books of Horror group is really good on Facebook, and there's a ton of really creative, really good people that are willing to help and willing to, do what they can to make sure everybody rises together. And that's the whole thing. Like, there's so many readers out there that we shouldn't be in competition with each other, and we shouldn't worry about, I get more clicks than you or whatever. But I mean, just trying to help each other and trying to promote each other. And that's what I try to foster as much as possible.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of authors do help each other in the horror community. They're always sharing each other's works and being ARC readers for other authors as well. So it is a very helpful community.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I definitely wouldn't have the success that I have now if it wasn't for the people in these groups. Like these super fans, these readers, these whale readers that just go through my entire catalog and give me pointers and notes. And it's amazing. It truly is a gift for sure.
So have you ever scared yourself with anything that you've written?
I don't think I've scared myself. My mind tends to make things I wish I could write down what's in my mind sometimes, because that's sometimes way scarier than what I actually put on the page. But no, I don't think I've ever scared myself with my own writing. That's for sure. Maybe how bad it is sometimes.
Do your colleagues know what you do?
Some of them do. Some of them, I mean, they could care less. I assume it's just one of those things. Like if you're a writer, you're a writer, and it doesn't really matter what your day job is. But do
you scare your colleagues with some of the things you write?
Sometimes I do. I mean, there's not. It's hard to find people that actually love reading horror in my line of work. They tend to not be a big reading group, but the ones that do tend to like what I put out. So that's good.
That's good. Okay, so how important is the research phase when you're working on a new horror story?
It depends what the story is. my second book, Avernus Island, it dealt with a leper colony, like in fact, a leper colony off the coast of British Columbia. And that was all real. And that really blew me away. And I tried to get as much details in there that I could without, the story sacrificed. But it depends on the story. Like God of the Dead, it was about policemen, so I didn't really have to do too much research about that. The Dark Breed was a family in a cottage in the middle of the woods, so it was mostly just isolation horror. But yeah, I mean, it depends on the story for sure.
Yeah. So, what horror authors have inspired your work?
I would say that growing up, I always wanted to be Clive Barker. I loved the book Thief of Always. I thought that was one of his best books, and I liked obviously Stephen King, his earlier stuff for sure, and Dean Koontz. I mean, just the way these guys can have you disappear into their stories and just totally enthralled. I just wanted to be able to do that for sure.
How about are there any sort of like new authors that have sort of like inspired your work as well?
Oh, for sure. There's a ton of new ones. Jeff Strand is a favorite. I really enjoy his work. I mean, his writing is so clean and so effortless. It's ridiculous. There's a bunch of new guys coming out. Like Ben Young is really good. Joseph Sackett, he's crushed 4 books in the last few months, and I mean he's well on his way to being a major player in the horror community. Who else? Phil Fracassi, he's been around for a while, but he's really good. Geez, there's really so many to mention. Phil Baker, another great one. But yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how many great new writers there are. Like every day I get new entries to the contest and I'm just blown away. There's a father and son team that came first and second last month. The Barnard brothers, the Barnard father and son team, Stephen Barnard and his son, and they're amazing. They're definitely major players.
Yeah. So how do you pick their stories? Do you go on what sort of things do you look for in the story?
Well, I love stories that start quick. I don't really enjoy the slow burn type of story. I came from a screenwriting background, so I'm really into having a story open fast and keep moving and really don't stop until the end. And I like to keep that going with the short chapters and the short little cliffhangers and stuff like that. And if it doesn't have that, then I move on to the next story. I want that story to be as fast as possible so people don't get bored and don't lose interest and just want to keep reading. Yeah.
So that's probably the best way sometimes, isn't it, when it starts fast, especially if you've got a lot of stories in one book.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Okay, so have you got any memorable reactions from readers that stand out to you?
Yeah. Like, I mean, when I first wrote A Dark Breed, I put it out, and it was a really rough draft, and I would never do this now, but I put it out on the Books of Horror Facebook group, which you're not allowed to do anymore. They made a new group for that. But at the time, I was new and I didn't really know, and I asked for people to give me responses, give me some notes on the book, and through that post, I've met some of my biggest fans now, like Lee Kenny, Sammy Dyer. I mean, all these people that are just every day posting about me or liking my posts and just propelling me, into more and more success and just, these are some amazing people and they've given me some huge support and great reviews and great quotes.
Fantastic. So have you got any upcoming projects or releases that you're excited about?
Yeah, I'm currently halfway through book 4 It doesn't really have a title yet, but I'm excited about it. It's a little bit, it's different than the last three, but it still moves fast, and I'm really excited. It should be out before Christmas.
Fantastic. I wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Okay, so how do you think the horror genre is going to evolve over the next few years?
I've seen it take a bunch of turns. I mean, they have definitely expanded through what was around when I was younger. Definitely when I was reading in high school. I mean, it was horror, and then it. But now there's like splatterpunk, and there's extreme horror, and there's all sorts of different little niche genres, which I think is amazing because all these people have their own. They could be a superstar in their own little niche, and that's great because people that like splatterpunk aren't going to read Stephen King, and people that read Stephen King might not like splatterpunk. So all that stuff, and I hope it keeps evolving. I hope it keeps growing, and so everyone has their own almost tailor-made horror genre.
Yeah. Is there any particular genre? Is there any particular subgenre that you wouldn't entertain writing?
That I would not entertain?
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. I'm not a big extreme horror fan. Books like movies like Saw and things like that. Like I enjoy those movies, but I don't know if I would find myself writing in that genre. But I tend to like the more I guess you'd call it old school horror.
Yeah. That's fine. I mean, everybody likes their own different genres, don't they? A lot of people like all.
Oh, yeah.
So what advice would you give to aspiring horror writers?
I would say, if you have a piece that you want to get out there, I mean, get it out there. Get it on Wattpad, get it on these little apps and sites that you can put it up for free and get some responses, get some action. Because if you just hide it in your computer and no one gets to see it, I mean, you could be missing out on a lot of fans, a lot of success. And I know some people are a little bit nervous about putting themselves out there, and it's a big thing. You put yourself out there, and immediately, you're open to criticism, you're open to negative reviews, and everyone gets them, and it's not fun, no matter who you are. But I would say just be brave and get it out there, and let's see what you got, for sure.
I think the trick is not to take the reviews to heart, isn't it? It's sort of like to kind of, if the reviews are sort of like have good advice in them and they're not nasty, then obviously you can take those on board, but obviously don't take them to heart.
Yeah. I mean, I try not to read the reviews. I mean, as much as I don't want to read them, I end up reading them anyway. And I mean, most of them are favorable. Most of them are okay, but it's like you always remember the negative ones, which is horrible, but you do. And you're right. You really have to try not to take them to heart. You try not to, dwell on them. Definitely don't respond to them. But yeah, it is hard, and it's just the way it is. I mean, without those people buying your book or reading your book, you don't have a career. So I mean, you have to take the good with the bad, and hopefully it's just more good.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Patrick. It's been lovely having you here. Is there anything?
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Is there anything you want to add?
No, this has been great. Thanks very much.
You're very welcome.